is once your enemy. Now see, let your table. And you know, to be honest with you, we're all enemies of God and Jesus Christ the moment we're born and start sinning. We become his enemies because we are unacceptable. You know, one of my classes, the professor said to the class, he said, when you stand before God, he's going to ask you, why should I? What's your answer? And everybody had different. The one he gave kind of shocked us all. We gave things like because of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. But the answer he gave us shocked us all, and he gave us the explanation, and it's true. He said, God, because I'm as good as you are. And you sat there and you'd sit there and listen. Like, what? But it's true, because when you take on Jesus Christ, it is no longer you, but Jesus Christ, who is God. And he is as good as God. And that's why you get into heaven, because you're perfectly made through, renewed through the blood of Jesus Christ by his death on the cross and your faith in him. And God sees his son, Jesus Christ. No longer sees you as the enemy, but he sees his son. But you know, that brings me to the fact that human history is filled with man has rebelled against God. If you think about it, right from the Garden of Eden all the way through the present day, we see how man has rebelled against God. Our 13th message in this series of John. We're going to be in chapter 5. We're going to be in verses 1 to 16, and we're going to see this. But all the way up until present day, we look around and we see how man has rebelled against God. And we're rebels by nature. And the only reason we are not a rebel is because of the supernatural work of God in our lives by faith in Jesus Christ. But we're by nature rebels. I mean, think about all the things you like to do or used to do. A lot of it was rebellion. Think about you as a kid. Your parents tell you to do something, unless you've got that perfect child, no. Maybe later. Not now. And all of you that are parents know that. And I am perfectly blessed with 3 imperfect children, because I get that. But I was like that. Go clean up your room? No, not now, maybe later. You know, our rebellious nature and our struggles with authority, particularly Jesus' authority as Lord, will become clear in the Gospel of John, chapter 5. We'll see it very clear. You know, Jesus is this lame man, and he is persecuted because of it. He is going to be persecuted for doing something good. But this persecution him with the perfect opportunity to reveal his authority over all of mankind. He's going to reveal to everyone that he has authority over the physical elements of this world. The physical elements. Later we'll see elements with calmings of storms and stuff. But the physical body, he's going to prove he is sovereign over all when he performs a miracle in this chapter. And what's funny is, as he does that, he's going to be persecuted for doing that by the man who blames him and by the religious leaders of that day, telling them, you can't do that. And Jesus has an answer for all of it, because he can. Because he's God. And that's basically his answer to it. You know, when we look at this, the big idea that we're going to see in this is that the persecution of Jesus provides him with an opportunity to reveal his authority over all mankind and to confront the religious leaders with their rebellion against God. Because they're in rebellion. They are totally rebelling against God, just like we do. Nobody's above it. So verses 5, 1 to 9, Jesus is Lord over the sickness. He is Lord over the sickness. If you write that down, fill it in your blanks. He's Lord over sickness. If you have an element with you this morning, I want you to know it's not too big of a problem for Jesus Christ, because he's Lord over it. Whatever sickness you have, he can heal. He can heal. He doesn't choose to heal every single time, but he can, because he's Lord over it. Verses 1 to 9, we're going to read this. It says, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. After what we saw in chapter 4, a period of time has passed, and he's going up to Jerusalem. Remember, he's going up in elevation now. He's not going north. He's going up in elevation from where he's at. And it says, now there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethsaida, which has 5 roofed colonnades. I saw a picture of it. It's beautiful. A replica of what it would have looked like. And so you get this building, this roof with 5 colonnades that are going up, columns, if you will. And it says, in these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. And then in most Bibles, they'll leave this out, but a few select will put in brackets this following verse and a half, waiting for the moving of the water, because an angel would go down into the pool from time to time to stir up the water. And the first one who got in after the water was stirred up hovered for whatever element he had. And the reason why most verses are, if you have a Bible that doesn't have it in there, the reason why it's not in there is because the older manuscripts didn't have it. And the newer manuscripts would put an asterisk by it, meaning it was not in the original manuscript to begin with. Because somebody came along and wrote in there, and the reason why they wrote it in is to help clarify what you're going to what the myth of the day was, that an angel would come into this pool and heal people, which apparently was a myth at the time that they believed in. The writing here that is placed in here, John does not use any of the words anywhere else in his gospel, so it had to have been somebody else that wrote it later on at a particular time. So if you have a Bible that doesn't have those in there, just understand that it's there in some verses, some versions, but it's got an asterisk beside it because nobody really believes it was in the original writing. And then in verse 5 it says, one man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. Saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time. He said to him, do you want to be healed? It's a funny question. Do you want to be healed? I know what my answer would be. Yeah, right. And the sick man answered him. The sick man answered him, sir, I have no one to put me in the pool with the water when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me. Basically, sure, I'd like it, in a grumpy voice, but I got no one to help me. And so Jesus said to him, get up, take up your bed, and walk. And it says in verse 9, and at once the man was healed. And he took up his bed and walked. And John makes a point to put in here this particular phrase. Now that day was the Sabbath. Why is that so important? Why is it so important that he puts down now was the Sabbath? Because of all these religious leaders, you can't do any work on the Sabbath. No work on Saturday. You can't do anything. The only one who can do anything is God if he chooses to work a miracle. And we're going to see that. That's why Jesus does it. So the first thing that I look here is that this is not a fake healing. This is not a fake healing. Remember, this guy has been born with it. He's over 30 plus years old. He's not faking it. He's been here. Jesus couldn't have pre-planned this. You know, Jesus at this time is only 31, 32 years old. This guy is older. He's lived, as a matter of fact, this guy is so old, he would have already died in their demographics. Most people didn't live past 38, 39 years old in this time frame as a male. And he's already outdone those expectations as someone that is crippled, lamed. And he surpassed those. And so Jesus, there's no way Jesus could have said, hey, we're going to fake this. You're going to start out born in life, and you're going to grow up, and then I'm going to come by the pool one day, see you, and we're going to fake this healing. It wouldn't have happened. Couldn't have happened. But this lame man that is sitting there, for whatever reason, was chosen by Jesus Christ that day. Now, you got to remember, there are people everywhere that are sick. Jesus didn't heal everybody at that pool that day. For whatever reason, he looked at and chose this particular guy. And he said, do you want to be made well? I sit here and I wonder, you know, some of the things that I think about, I've told you to look at when you're doing a Bible study. Why did John write this book? To show that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. So you'll believe. Number two, why did he heal on that day? The Sabbath. Because he's going to show that he's God. Number three, why this guy? I haven't got a clue. He could have picked anybody that day. And it doesn't say he didn't heal more people that day. It just says he healed this guy. Why did he choose him? Maybe it's because this guy's attitude. Maybe he knew when he was asking him this question, he was going to get a response like this. Who knows? I don't. I don't think anybody does. But I do know this. It is by his grace alone that this guy is healed. The next time when you think about Jesus Christ dying for you and that he has saved you by his blood, think about his grace that he has given to you. That he has given it to you. But we see this guy and he answers with this grumpy attitude. Most scholar presents it as this grumpy attitude. Sure, I'd like to be healed. Sure, I'd like it, but what's that going to do for me? Somebody asks you, you'd be grumpy too. You've been like this all your life. You know, the other thing I see here is that this isn't a faith healing. It's not a faith healing. You know, there are many books and television promising people if they just have enough faith, all their physical infirmities will miraculously be healed. Jesus didn't say that to this guy. Matter of fact, this guy, as far as we can tell, has no faith. He has nothing going on in his life. He chooses him. He doesn't tell him, if you just have enough faith. I mean, we do see that in other miracles. But we don't see that here. You know, Jesus' miracles are not based on your faith. They are based on his grace. And we don't see that here. We don't see him saying, well, if you just have enough faith, I'm going to heal you. He doesn't need that. There was an evangelist by the name of Peter Popoff that was a faith healer. And he was popular back in the 70s and 80s. I've even seen him on TV. I believe he's in Canada or something like that. Dark hair, beard. He promises to heal people. You know, call out names and elements in the audience claiming to have received divine revelation that he was able to heal them. Do you know he is a fraud? show. When they caught a live radio transmission between Popoff and his wife, and they aired it. She had been going out, her and some of the co-workers, been going out through the audiences, listening in on people, listening in on what they're saying about their elements and other things, and they would respond back to him. He had a little radio in his ear, and he would go on, proceed to use that information to tell them. You know, the account of John's gospel is in supports faith healing. It doesn't support it. The man who's healed has no example of faith in his life. As we look at verse 7, his response to Jesus' question, do you want to be healed? Was actually a complaint. He's complaining that Jesus is even bothering him. One person said it reads less as an apt and subtle response to Jesus' question than as a crotchety grumbling of an old and not very perceptive man who thinks he is answering a stupid question. He doesn't know who Jesus is. He's probably never seen him, never heard of him. He's been in Jerusalem by this pool the entire time. To him, it's just another guy asking him a question. Do you want to be healed? Grumpy old man. Can you blame him? If you're taught that something in your life has caused you to be in this particular instance, and you'd been here for that amount of time, can you blame him for being grumpy when he himself doesn't know what he's done probably? Can't blame him. Maybe that's why Jesus chose to heal him, because he knew the kind of heart he had. Verse 3, the next thing I see, that it's a free healing, that man didn't purchase it. Jesus didn't give me a love offering to heal you. I'm going to send out a praise envelope, mail it back with your praise donation, and you'll receive some sort of healing in your life. Seen that before too. With your donation of $10, I'll pray over this rag, and whatever element you have, you can put on, and you'll be healed. Jesus didn't say that. I'm prompted to tell these televangelists that do that. Jesus never charged. Why are you? Paul never charged. Peter never charged. Why are you charging for a gift that, if you have, God has given you to use? Jesus never charged. That's our example, right? And this guy, I think about it like this. He didn't deserve to be healed. He didn't deserve it. No more than the next person. I mean, there's probably hundreds of people around this pool. What made this guy deserve it more than the next? He didn't. You know, you look at yourself, look at that person on the street. What makes you any different than that person on the street? There's no difference. Some of us think, you know, I'm deserved it more. I have been such a good child my entire life that God, I just deserved it. You don't deserve it. It says in the Bible that there is no one, not one, that hasn't sinned. There's no one good. You didn't deserve it. This guy didn't deserve it. But that's what makes it so special. That's why grace is so amazing, because no one deserves it. And it is freely given by Jesus Christ. This embittered man, broken and helpless, didn't deserve it any more than the next. He's done nothing to deserve the kindness that Jesus gives him. when Jesus speaks out to him, he responds with this ugly comment, complaining. No help. If I just had some help, I might not be here. Sure, I'd love to be healed. You gonna throw me in the water? You got some friends? I've been just waiting. I'm just like everybody else. And Jesus looks past that. Today is your lottery day. You just won the lottery today, big guy. Some of you are sitting there looking at your numbers this morning thinking, man, I missed it by 1, missed it by 2. You're in line with about 40 million people. Jesus picked this guy out that day and says, there's no charge. I'm going to show you something amazing in your life. The other thing is this. It was a full healing. You know, when the guy got there, Jesus says, pick up your mat. The guy just didn't pick it up and start struggling and fall over again. He didn't just stand up and say, I'm still not fully healed. I can't pick up my mat. When Jesus heals in the Bible, I'm going to point out some things to you. When you see somebody getting healed by Jesus, it is immediate. Every single time I see Jesus heal somebody, it's immediate. It is permanent because they never have that ailment again. They die of some other cause. And it is fully done. You know, the guy that he healed with blinded eyes, he took some dirt and he had to pour water over it, but he was fully healed and could see. When Jesus heals, he does it perfectly. He doesn't do a halfway job. He has full control over man's body, like right now. And he says, I'm going to fully heal you. I mean, what would it have done if Jesus just says, all right, get up and walk, but you can't carry your mat. You're going to have to leave it there. What good would that have done that guy? Wouldn't have done anything. He got full use of his body that day. After lying there for 30 plus years, he is finally able to get up and walk. Jesus, when he heals somebody, he heals fully. When he heals you spiritually, when you place your faith in him, he doesn't sit there and say, all right, you're only partially healed. You still have to do some work to get the rest. He doesn't sit there and say, oh, I fully healed you spiritually, and then I'm going to take it back because you messed up tomorrow. When he gives it to you, it is full, and it is permanent. That's what it is. And he does it for this guy. And this guy gets up his mat, and he takes off. But something happens that provides Jesus an opportunity for this, to show that he's the Lord over the Sabbath. Verses 10 through 16 says that, so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, it's the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your mat. Let me explain. So this guy, Jesus tells him to take up his mat for a reason. He wants people to see him walking with his mat, working on the Sabbath. He wants to make it a point. This man has been healed by God's grace, and that God is actively working on the Sabbath. And what God does on the Sabbath is acceptable. And if this man can walk with that mat because he was healed and he was told to by God, then he is perfectly able to carry that mat. It's called the law of grace on the Sabbath of God's work. Because God doesn't stop working on Sabbath. I mean, think about it like this. God doesn't stop working on the Sabbath. Man did. so they could worship God on the Sabbath. But God never stopped working. I mean, if he did, all chaos would happen. If he stopped working, all the stuff we see around here would be chaos. He always works. He's always at work. And then he goes on, verse 11, he says, but he answered them, and this is a great answer. The man who healed me, that man said to me, take up your bed and walk. He's blaming Jesus, by the way. He's saying, hey, it's not my fault I'm carrying the mat right now. He's pointing fingers, and we've all done that. When we got in trouble, we all pointed fingers at somebody else. I had two brothers pointing at me. I always pointed at one of them. And me, my older brother, we always pointed at the middle brother. We know how that is. The middle child always gets the blame for good reason. They're always at fault. And listen, he's sitting there even after Jesus Christ chose to heal him, is still complaining and is still blaming. Hey, you can't blame me. This guy that healed me said to pick it up and carry it. I'm just doing what he said. Really? Really? And then they asked him this. Well, who is the man who said, you take up your bed and walk? We'll go deal with him then. You can't carry this, and if he's telling you by his law, by his authority that you can do it, we're going to go talk to him. We're going to explain to him who's the sheriff around here. Can you imagine that? Jesus, fully God, fully man, but fully divine in nature, and a bunch of people are going to go tell him what he can and can't do. We're going to go deal with him. We're the sheriffs in town. And he said, now, the man who had been healed didn't know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn. He's like, he didn't know where he's at or who he is. There's a crowd here. Verse 14, it says, afterward Jesus found him in the temple, and he said to him, see, you're well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you. So I know you blamed me for what all just happened. And I'm going to let you in a little secret. You've been sinning most of your life. Your attitude towards me this morning was a sin. This has been your attitude most of your life. And there's a reason why you were blamed. If you keep on sinning, something worse than that lameness is going to happen to you. You don't want that. You know, in later on we'll see that Jesus is confronted and they ask the question, why is this man lame? In another miracle. And Jesus says, wasn't his parents' fault? Wasn't his fault. It was strictly for God to be glorified with that. But not all times are people sick. Is it just so God can get glory? Sometimes it is the result of sin. And that seems to be what Jesus is implying here. That you had done something in your life that caused this. And because of that, you need to stop sinning so something else worse doesn't happen. That's the implication of what Jesus is saying. It says in verse 15, the man went away. He told the Jews that it was Jesus that healed him. I found him. Got him. He came and talked to me. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. And so we see that the story doesn't end here. It isn't as simple as just healing this man and the man going on his way. As we look at verse 9, it says, now that day was the Sabbath. You know, this whole story has a reason. Jesus is setting it up for a confrontation with these religious leaders. It's almost as if Jesus is doing it on purpose. because seeing what's been going on and he's tired of it. And he's basically saying that God is the only one that can heal on the Sabbath. God is the only one that can work on the Sabbath. I just healed on the Sabbath. I'm God. That's what he's setting up. In no uncertain terms, these guys, these religious leaders, know that only God can work. As we see in Acts when the disciples are out there preaching, and they're like, let's kill them, let's stone them, let's put them in prison, let's do something with them. And one of the priests said, if this is of God, there is nothing we can do to stop it. Let's just let it go. That is what Jesus is saying. If healing is from God, religious leaders, there's nothing you can do about it. I just healed him. I'm God. They know, they understand. In our Bibles, we look at, we might not read that in there. We might think, oh man, why are they so mad? In Jesus' time, they would have understood exactly what he's saying. Now here's my question. This guy just performed a miracle. He just totally healed this guy. Why can't you believe? Why can't you believe what just happened? Why do you have to hate him and fight him? All because he doesn't meet up to your religious standards. Maybe your religious standards are bad. There's something wrong. And it's their rebellion. This guy rebelled that got healed. But these religious leaders are rebelling against God with their attitude, with what they're perceiving and what we're going to see next week. And it doesn't stop with them. It is in all of us. It is in all of us. You know, as I look at it, we see this guy and the word spreading. I just wonder what would have happened at the pool that day with the other people sitting there that could have seen. Healed this guy? He just told him to walk and get up, and he did. I wonder how many people looked at Jesus that day and believed. I wonder how many people looked at Jesus and said, he just healed on the Sabbath. Only God can do that. This is the guy we've been waiting for our entire life. You know, we all have choices to make. We're all going to stand before Jesus one day. It says that every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess at some point that Jesus is Lord. It can be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be next week. It could be when you step out into eternity. It's your first time doing it. But make no mistake, everybody's going to stand before Jesus Christ and bow before him and say, you are Lord. They'll do it with love or they'll do it with hatred. But they're going to do it. It's much easier to do with love. It means you love him. It means you have accepted him. You've accepted his grace in your life to save you. Save you not just here, but to save you for all eternity. Or it could be later on. And by that time, you're going to be grumbling and complaining because you never did it before. They're out into eternity every moment. And there's people stepping before Jesus Christ every moment in rebellion, having to bow for the first time. Don't make that mistake. Don't let that be you. Don't let the first time you look before Jesus Christ and say, you're Lord. be the day you die. Let it be today. Let it be today. And if you know somebody, go tell them. Go tell them. Don't let today be the day you die, be the day you tell Jesus Christ He's Lord. Let it be before then. Because you don't know when your day has come. It says no one is promised tomorrow. There is no one promised anything, that life is fleeting. It can be gone in just a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. You are not promised one more moment. If you have friends and loved ones that you really care about, remember that when you see them. But you know what? They're going to stand for Jesus Christ. Did I do everything in my power to share with them the love that Jesus has for them? Did I do everything in my power? Because you know what? You're going to have to give an account before Jesus Christ one day. You're going to have to say, Jesus, this is what I've done in my life for you. For your glory, for everything. This is what I've done. Just like everybody else. You know, there is one thing that I'm going to leave you with. Because Jesus Christ is Lord of sickness and the Sabbath. He can heal us and give us rest. I want you to take that with you. Heal you and give you rest. Because that's what the Sabbath was made for, rest. Some of you live restless lives right now. Some of you are sitting out there and your life is restless every single day. I'm just telling you the answer is Jesus Christ. You can find rest with Him. He doesn't just heal you to save you for eternal life. He also saves you so you can have a better life down here. A kingdom life that He calls it. A life that He can give you rest in. Because you know what rest does? It doesn't worry about the cares and worries of this world. It focuses on the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And you'll find rest. You can find rest. Because He is Lord over the Sabbath. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank You